A very good afternoon and namaste from Kathmandu, Nepal, and a very good evening or morning, depending on the place where you are tuning from. I would like to welcome you all on the second day of Kailash Cafe. I hope you all enjoyed and learned something new about Kailash Sacred Landscape yesterday. So, in continuation of learning and sharing experience from Kailash Sacred Landscape, today there will be two sessions. The first one is on oral presentation and the second is poster presentation. So we start the second day of Kailash Cafe with the session Ecosystem Services and Sustainable Livelihoods. This session will be moderated by Pradyumna Rana. Pradyumna Jangabadur Rana is a climate change, adaptation and governance analyst at ICIMOD. He specializes in policy and institutional analysis in relation to climate change adaptation and governance. He looks into how policies, regulation, and strategies are shaped and implemented and provides recommendations as to their effective implementation for the management of public affairs. He is a part of a team involved in trying to understand and address drivers of social inequality to improve livelihood, security, and well-being in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. Over to you, Pradyumna.
A very good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending from where you are joining us from. Welcome to day 2, session 2 of the Kailash Cafe. This session now is on ecosystem services and sustainable livelihoods, in which we have 3 very interesting presentations. Before we commence with the presentations, we would like to begin the session with Slido questions. The questions are related to the session and will help us understand your knowledge regarding the ecosystem and livelihood in the landscape. To participate, I would like to request all participants to kindly scan the QR code as visible on your screens. Alternately, you can go through the link provided and put in the code to view the questions. So the first question is, in your opinion, which ecosystem service is the most significant in the Kailash landscape? Please choose one of the options, as can be seen in the screen. Thank you, and the polls are coming in, and I have cultural ecosystem at 86%, cultural ecosystem services, and second is, of course, provisioning services. Now moving into the next question. This tree species, whose name translates to tree of the gods, occurs in the mid-hills of the landscape. Can you name it? Yes, we're getting different responses. Is deodar, cherpine, agarwood, chiuri, neem. But the highest number of responses is deodar, which is the correct answer. Moving on to the last question. Please name any non-NTFP product that you have purchased with its origin in the landscape. You can mention up to 3 products. Thank you for your responses. I think the most number is a tie between timur and honey, I guess. But then others are, of course, Yasagumbati, Allo. Thank you all for participating in this Slido questions, this session. Now moving into the presentation, the first presentation of this session is on forest cover change in northwestern border district of far west Nepal by Dr. Sushila Rijal. To tell you a little about Sushila ji, she is a PhD scholar at the Department of Environmental Management, Prince of Songkla University, Thailand. She is pursuing her PhD degree in contribution of community forests in forest cover change in the Nepalese context. She has more than a dozen of research articles under her credit, both as lead and co-authors. Her research interest includes land use, land cover change, urbanization, ecosystem services, climate change adaptation, and GIS and remote sensing application. Sushila ji, if you are there, I would like to request you to kindly present now.
Well, thank you so much. Respected professor, academic personalities, and professionals, as well as researchers, and all the participants in the Kailash Cafe. A very good afternoon and namaste. I'm Sushila Rijal, PhD student Department of Environmental Management, Prince of Songkla University. Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizer for providing us the platform to share our research experiences. It's an honor to be part of this Kailash CAFE event. Today, I am here to share our ongoing research project and some outputs regarding our ongoing project entitled Forest Cover Change in Northwestern Border District of Far West Nepal. As I said earlier, this is our ongoing research project, and your comments, suggestions, and feedbacks are highly appreciated. And if you have any queries, I'll try to answer them at the end of the presentation. This is the first slide of my presentation, which deals about the organization of the work. It goes as introduction, study area, research gap, objective and significance, methods and materials, results, and conclusion session. Let me begin with introduction session. Land use land cover change is an integral part of the changing environment globally, and it has the capacity to influence the biodiversity, modifying ecosystem, and converting the climatic condition in local and global scale. Environmental sustainability, biodiversity, and ecosystem services supply depends on the changing forest cover, particularly in the area where the livelihood largely relies upon the forest resource. In several parts of Nepal and elsewhere, forest resources have been confronting various pressurizing factors such as urbanization, forest fire hazards, smuggling and encroachment, overexploitation of resources, and forest degradation. Hence, the regular monitoring of the forest cover is highly essential. This is the study area. It is located in the northwestern border district of far western region of Nepal, which lies within the Kailash Sacred Landscape. It covers an area of 8,786 square kilometer, incorporating 4 administrative districts. They are Dachula, Baitari, Dadildura, and Bajang. The elevation of the study area ranges between 257 to 7,132 meters above the sea level. It shares its northern boundary with Humla district and our neighboring country China on the north, southern boundary with Kailali and Kanchapur districts, eastern boundary with Doti, Acham, and Bajra, while western boundary is adjoined with our northern neighboring country India. This slide deals about the research gap, objective, and significance. Let me directly enter into the objective of our research. Our major objectives of our research are to explore the land cover change of 4 districts of northwestern Nepal within Kailash Sacred Landscape, and its particular focus is on forest cover change during 1989 to 2019, and to investigate the major influencing factors of forest cover. The achieved outputs are significant or important because it provides the updated land use land cover database, and these databases are fundamentally essential and important in monitoring the forest resources and updating the existing forest management plans and policies, and they are of policy significance. As I stated earlier, this is our ongoing research project, and several works are still ongoing. However, we have almost finalized the land use land cover analysis part, and in order to analyze the land use land cover change of the study area, we have achieved the land satellite database from USGS website. For the year 1989, in 2004, we have used the Landsat 5 image, whereas for the year 2019, we have used the OLI image. The land use land cover are classified into 8 broad classes, namely forest cover, shrub area, grassland, settlement, cultivated land, barren land, water body, and snow and ice cover. For the accuracy assessment, we have taken the topographical data of survey department and GPS control points as the reference. And in order to identify the drivers of forest cover change, we have planned to conduct the focus group discussions and focus group discussion with local indigenous people, forest experts, technical persons and professionals from district forest office, and secondary sources for forest regime. As this work is still ongoing, several results are yet to be achieved, and some are yet to be verified. However, regarding the land use land cover change analysis, we have acquired the results. The results so far indicate that the study area has been undergoing through the increased settlements, increased forest cover in grassland, whereas cultivated land area, shrubland, barren land in water body, as well as snow cover, they have increased over the periods during 1989 to 2019. The maps on the right side show the changing land use land cover over 1989, 2004, and 2019, whereas the fourth map on the right bottom right side shows the elevation of the study area. This slide also deals with the summary of the acquired results of land use land cover. According to the analysis, newer settlements are expanding at the outskirts of district headquarters and proximity to road networks. Cultivated land had increased during 1989 to 2004. However, it declined during 2004 and between 2004 and 2019. Similarly, forest cover increased over the period. Shrubland area has slightly declined throughout the period, and it is one of the important factors we have found as the cause for forest cover increase. Barren land remarkably declined, whereas grassland has increased significantly over the period, and snow and ice cover has declined in the past 30 years. Statistics also shows the similar results. It has been shown in the table, and this slide also shows the changing land use land coverage status of the study area. This circle, we have identified the changing transitions of different land cover classes into one another, and the major spatial locations of changes are highlighted in circle, highlighted, or they are marked with circle. Regarding the objective 2, we have been working on it, and the general in order to summarize the results that we have acquired through the secondary literature and preliminary field visit, we have identified that several factors are associated with the changing forest cover. Although forest cover has not changed so significantly, it has increased in comparison to 1989, and by 2019 forest cover has increased. So we have identified in the preliminary, as a preliminary result, we have identified several factors are associated with forest cover change in the study area, forest cover increase in the study area, and one of the factors is forest management regime. As community forest management has been an integral part of the forest regeneration and forest cover increase in Nepal, study area also experiences similar successful results. I mean, they have contributed in the increased forest cover, and total 1,056 community forest user groups have been managing the forest cover. Similarly, the forest cover are also being managed by the marginalized and poor communities for their livelihood, and also for the forest management. And several forests are being conserved as sacred groves. That means they are managed as religious forests, and some forests which were previously under private ownership, they have been handed over to handed over to the central regime under Forest Nationalization Act 1957, and protected forests up in Upper Conservation Area in the Darchula district. we can say this. And the Kailash Sacred Landscape Conservation and Development Initiative across the border area of Nepal, India, and China, which aims to gain the long-term conservation of ecosystems and safeguarding the cultural linkages. It has also contributed in restoration of forest resource. So agroforestry, that means it is we preliminary have assumed that it has least it has a least relatively less contribution in forest cover. However, the conservation of the resource by local indigenous people is remarkably contributing in the forest cover increase. That means local indigenous communities, they have possess a sound knowledge about preserving, processing, and commercializing the local and indigenous plants. That means they receive several ecosystem services such as firewood, fuel, similar timber and fiber, and made several medicinal and herbal plants that the local healers use to cure several health-related issues such as cuts, burn, and general pains. So they are preserving the species that they could use for their medicinal purpose. And most importantly, there are several informal social institutions which not only contribute in the social cohesion but also remarkably or strongly support and contribute in the resource management. So not only forest resource but even pasture management has been an important function under the informal institutions, social institutions. Pasture and forest management, they have set certain rules for resource extraction, the timing, and the management practices for the resource use, which has significantly helped to conserve the forest resource. Even there are some semi-nomadic and transhuman communities which livelihood is basically based on forest resource, and they on the one hand they exploit the forest resource for their livelihood. However, due to their higher dependency upon forest, they also have the sense that they have to preserve the forest resource, and they aim to they target to utilize it sustainably. However, several aspects of local, indigenous, and traditional way of conserving the forest resource are yet to be explored. And as this is the ongoing research project, we still have to make a few visits and discuss focus group discussion and KII, and we will acquire the detailed information in this regard. Having said this, I'm almost at the final phase of my presentation. Regarding the forest cover chains and forest cover status of the study area, we have identified several challenges. They are associated with migration, overexploitation of resources, lack of scientific knowledge in the extraction of forest resources, forest fire, lack of sustainable land use and resource management, and less emphasis on the documentation and institutionalization of traditional and local knowledge and practices, and cultivated land and sustainable land loss and sustainable food security. So the ways forward that we recommend are, there is the need to incorporate the indigenous local knowledge and knowledge based conservation practice, promote and extend the knowledge and focus capacity building in terms of livestock farming management practice, and need to promote the local species and various and varieties through awareness and knowledge dissemination. Combating several challenges and sustainable utilization of forest resources highly essential. So as this research work is still ongoing, we highly expect several comments, feedbacks, and suggestions. And we assure that we'll be able to share a complete research outputs after the accomplishment of the remaining remaining research activities. Having said this, I came to the end of my presentation. If you have any queries, I'll try to answer them at the end. Thank you so much for your concentration.
Thank you, Sushila ji, for the presentation. It was very interesting to hear your findings. We look forward and wish you the very best for completion of this research, and look forward to hearing what your findings are in the future. And moving on to the next presentation, the topic is Wood for Thought, Untold Consequences of the Himalayan Gold Collection in the Kailash Landscape, which will be presented by Dr. Kesang Wangchuk. Dr. Wangchuk is a professional researcher in natural resources. He holds a PhD from University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences in Vienna, Austria, and has 21 scientific publications in international peer-reviewed journals. Currently, he is a biodiversity specialist at ICIMOD and leads work on human-wildlife conflict in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. As Dr. Wangchuk is currently in the field, in the landscape itself, we have pre-recorded his presentation. I would like to request our technical team to kindly share his recorded presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. This is Kesang Wangchuk from ICIMOD. I'm going to talk on the consequences of the caterpillar fungus collection in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. I've structured my presentation into 4 major sections. I'll start with introduction and end with conclusion. As you all know that the caterpillar fungus is usually collected from May to June annually, and caterpillar fungus collection has become a lucrative business that it has attracted a lot of people from the lower valley to the mountains. Every year we see a lot of people traveling to the mountains to collect the caterpillar fungus. But the sad reality is the collection sites are located in a cool environment where energy is very much needed to keep the collectors warm. And another sad reality is the whole environment has limited sources of energy. So therefore, collectors heavily depend on the shrubby vegetation for cooking and heating. Caterpillar fungus is extensively studied, but the resources associated with the fungus collection are least explored, therefore they are least understood. In order to fill this gap, we carried out a study and we looked at the level of fuel consumption and time spent by the collectors at the open and closed collection sites. In my following slides, I will explain what do we mean by open and closed collection sites. The second objective was to find out some key causes and their relations with the fuel consumption. Our study was conducted in the Kailash Sacred Landscape in the central Himalaya. Within the landscape, we selected Darchula and Bajang districts. In Bajang, the site called Kuntisan was selected. It represented the closed collection site. We called this site closed collection site because this site falls within the Apinampa conservation area where the caterpillar fungus collection will supply. And also, this area allows only the specific BSC community to collect caterpillar fungus from this area. On the contrary, we selected Raidungi in Bajang, which represented the open collection site. This has open access, and any Nepali citizen whoever can pay a collection fee is eligible to collect caterpillar fungus from this area. At each site, we selected 30 respondents, and we used focused group discussions and key informant interviews. We collected a series of information from the total number of people in the tent to the amount of fuel consumed daily. To get a precise estimate of fuel consumed, we physically measured the fuel at the campsite. The data that we collected were mostly quantitative, So the data was processed in the Microsoft Excel before exporting it to the SPSS for analysis. We used descriptive statistics to summarize the data, and we ran correlation analysis to see if fuel consumption is correlated with if the fuel consumption is correlated with other variables measured. And also, since we compared two sites, open and closed sites, so in order to see if variables differed between two sites, we conducted independent sample t-tests. We had 4 different 10 categories to see if there were significant differences among 10 categories. We conducted one-way amoeba tests. Finally, the means were compared using the cookies Kailash comparison tool. Our results showed that the number of people in the tent, length of stay, and amount of fuel collected were significantly greater at the open site in Bajang. Number of people in the tent in Bajang was about 5, and in Darchula it was about 3. And the average duration of stay in Bajang was close to 40 days, whereas in Darchula it was about a month. Fuel consumed was also greater in Bajang. It was about little over 6 kilograms daily, and in Darchula it was about 4.5 kilograms of fuel consumed daily. The length of stay and fuel consumed by tent category was also greater in Bajang, but on the closer look, we found that the average time of stay was greater in Bajang, that too in 4 people tent and 5 people tent. Similarly, the fuel consumed was also greater in bigger tents. Those were in 5 people and 6 people tents. So basically, these results mean that open access sites are being overexploited and the resources are over-extracted. We also looked at the gender aspect of fuel collection. Generally, the male collectors were more, but we detected significantly higher male collectors in 3 people and 5 people tents. The correlation results showed that the total people in a tent was significantly and positively correlated with the number of fuel collectors and also with fuel consumed. It shows that the bigger tents have more female collectors, which indicates that females are engaged in more activities, which is indicated by more fuel consumption. Finally, the message from here is probably the female collectors in the bigger tents must have had limited time to collect caterpillar fungus. Future implications. Bajang as an open site is overexploited, and if this practice continues and goes unchecked, then probably open site could be heading towards a tragedy of the commons where people will extract resources as much as they can, and the consequences will have to be borne by the entire community. Overexploitation would also mean that there will be loss of shrubby vegetation causing habitat destruction, loss of biodiversity, and other undesirable consequences. So if we don't want undesirable consequences from happening, then probably this study recommends that the sustainable harvesting plan for the protected areas in Nepal to include fuel and other resources management in their plan. It is also equally important to ensure sustainable energy, and this could be achieved by promoting renewable energy. Finally, our study concluded that the open sites are overexploited and resources are getting exhausted, and which could make the fungus collection unsustainable. Therefore, it is of utmost importance to ensure sustainable energy through promotion and use of renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Now moving on with the last presentation of this session. The topic is trade potential of oils extracted from khabu, rittha and timur in the Kailash Sacred Landscape Area, Nepal. This presentation will be done by Dr. Dipesh Pyakurel. To tell you a little bit about Dr. Pyakurel, has over 2 decades of in-depth experience in the Nepalese medicinal and aromatic plant sector and has conducted almost 6 dozen assignments on resource assessments, preparing biodiversity management and conservation plans, knowledge documentation, and trade of medicinal and aromatic plants. Dr. Pyakurel has extensive knowledge on and experience in forestry and agricultural value chains and has conducted more than 2 dozen value chain related assignments. I would request Dr. Pyakurel to kindly commence his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kailash CAFE, for giving me an opportunity. So my topic is as said earlier, trade potentiality of oils from khabu, rittha, and timur in Kailash Landscape Area, Nepal. We have, when we talk about these medicinal plants, we have the history of trade, documented trade of more than 1,000 years. And even now we are exporting about 300 species of medicinal plants in crude form. And out of that, 80 to 90% are exported in crude form. The prospects of secondary processed products, especially MAPs, has been discussed more, but the progress is very slow. However, we are doing good in export of essential oils. We have exported almost 39 tons of essential oils worth $3.8 million in fiscal year 2019-20. So there's one sector that we are doing very good apart from all. Regarding talking about this current project or paper, we have focused our work on Humla, Bajang, and Dasula and Baiteri of Kailash area. And maps are becoming one of the major source of income for KS residents, because before maybe 50 or 60 years ago, animal husbandry was the major one. And once there was change in forest regime, now medicinal plants are becoming one of the major source of KS. These are few medicinal plants that are found abundantly in Kailash Sacred Landscape Area in Nepal. We have categorized these into medicinal plants found in lower hills, mid hills, high mountains. And in terms of price, we have medicinal plants with less than 500 rupees per kg to more than 10,000 rupees per kg. So when we look at our 3 species, that is timur or Zanthoxylum armatum, rittha, Sapindus mukorossi, and khabu, these are found. Timur is found in mid and high hills, and its price range between 500 to 2,000 rupees per kg. Whereas rittha that is found below, that is found on lower hills, and the price is rupees below 500 rupees per kg. The case is same with khabu also. This paper documents the trade of 3 species, that is Prunus davidiana, Sapindus mukorossi, and Zanthoxylum armatum in Kailash Sacred Nepal, as well as trade potential of vegetable oils of Prunus davidiana, Sapindus mukorossi, and essential oil of Zanthoxylum armatum. That means we are discussing about the trade of crude as well as secondary processed products. Yeah, we have done the literature review. And these are the documents due of publication, Department of Forest publication, followed by journal articles. We have sourced for index, non-index, national and international journals. We have sourced for books, reports, both published and unpublished, and then policy documents. At the same time, we have done telephonic interviews with processors and traders up in these KSL areas, and also face-to-face. We have done face-to-face interview with traders and exporters of that area. When you go to findings, the first species is Prunus davidiana, that is called khabu, khambu, or Jusia Aro in Nepal. Its English name is Salis wild peach, David peach, mountain peach, and wild apricot. It's native to Far East Russia, China, and Korea, whereas in Nepal and in Himalayan region and Nepal, it was introduced some 1,000 years ago. Now it's widely domesticated in Western and Central Nepal, and we can say that it has escaped from the cultivation. That means it is found. The highest altitude record of this plant in Nepal is 3,400 meter at Muchu and Humla. At Muchu Humla. It is assumed to be found in Bazang and Darchula also. When we talk about use, it's a pioneer species that can colonize the very rough land, and it's excellent rootstock also. For medicinal purpose, it has analgesic, antispasmodic, anticoagulant, and this sort of uses. These uses are mostly use of vegetable oils. We are not talking about these seeds, but these are the uses of vegetable oils. When we talk about global trade, it's global trade in terms of the quantification and value of trade is not known. That means nobody has documented the trade at global level. Though we can see that seeds, some seeds, some small packet of seeds are sold in online markets in China. Based on others, based on that, we do not have any sort of global trade value or demand. When we talk about national trade, these are collected for medicinal purpose in the highlands, but they are not traded. And moreover, trade of seeds of khabu oil, that is Prunus davidiana oil, is not properly documented. However, these oils are traded from Humla region, and the average price in 2019-20 is USD 26.1. That is Nepalese rupees 3,000 per kg. But the one thing remarkable is that these trades are often mixed with oil of Prunus armisiana. We can call that chuli in Nepali. Both vegetable oils of chuli and khabu are traded together. These are in last year. Both oils are exported to Japan and other countries. The estimated quantity of trade is 2 to 3 tons. And the trade value is USD of little more than 52,000 kg. And when we talk about this, what to do with specific, when we talk about specific recommendation, this species should be included in the UN revenue list, because till now it is not included in the revenue list. So traders have to use other names to export this. And other need is resource quantification along with cultivation initiative is suggested in Kailash area. Timur is native product of Nepal. It's we all know timur. We can call it timur or bukit timur. Its English name is Nepalese pepper or pricklias. It's distributed in Indo-Malayan and Palearctic ecozone, where you can just see in the picture, right? It's mostly found in this old we can say Rolpa, Rukum, Salem, Putan, other reservoirs of timur, whereas it's also found in Darchula, Bateri, and Bazang area of Kailash Sacred Landscape Area. It's widely domesticated and also cultivated. Both domestication and cultivation has been done for this species. It has ethnobotanical and medicinal use. For commercial, it's mostly used in spices, condiments, flavoring agents, and pharmaceuticals. Yeah, we have the documented trade of timber. We have documented export of timber that dates back to almost 250 years ago, where at that time timber was mostly exported to India. Now we are exporting to other countries also, especially China and European countries. The total production volume range between 1,400 to 1,700 tons. That is the total estimated production of timber in Nepal. The price per unit is 8.26 per kg. That is rupees 950 per kg in 1920. The raw export volume is 1,100 to 1,557 tons. That's worth 9.09 to 12.86 million USD, whereas 143 to 300 tons are annually processed in Nepal, mostly to make essential oils, powders, Ayurvedic preparations. When we talk about the essential oil, that's Zanthoxylum oil. The annual process Annual processing and the export quantity range between 3.5 to 7.7 tons. And the price was rupees 1,300 to 16,000 per kg. That is 113 to 140 USD per kg. And the annual export value is USD 0.39 to 1.07 million. That's quite amount when we talk about only one specific species. When we talk about Kailash Sacred Landscape Area, estimated 25 to 30 tons of timber seeds are traded from KSL area, and these are the trade values that range between 23.75 to 28.5 million US dollars. One thing remarkable is that we do not have any processing industries or units in KSL area. That's quite unusual. And what we have to do is we have to do some sorts of technological advancement. That is, we have to develop low cost efficient technology that can be installed in KSL area to process oil. And now we are coming on our third and last species, that is rittha. This is by far one of the most important medicinal plants of Nepal in terms of trade volume, because this is one species which we can export in massive volume. That means in massive volume. It's found in this Indo-Malayan ecozone. In Nepal, it's found between 900 to 1700 meters. It's more prominent in Sudur Paschim and Karnali province, and largely found in Baitari, Darsula, and Bajang districts. Its commercial use it's commercially used to make soaps, shampoo, and detergent powders. Rittha is being now, starting from last 2 years, it is being exported to Europe. You can see a picture on the bottom right. That's the just cells of rittha ready to be used in these washing machines, where we can put 4 or 5 cells in one muslin cloth, and then keep in this and use as alternative to detergent powders. When we talk about trade, we annually we export 1,470 to 3,450 tons of raw rittha from Nepal. Mostly it has been exported to India, but in the last few years, I can say it's also being exported to it's also being exported to India. And the price is relatively low. It's only 140 rupees per kg. That's USD 1.22 per kg. And raw export volume and value range between 1285 to 2520 tons, worth 1.56 to 3.07 billion rupees. Only 15 to 30 tons are annually processed in Nepal. When we talk about soapnut oil, yes, we have prospects. On the lab, 20 to 25% oil is extracted from the oil from the seeds, and oil cake is used as manure and fuel. But its commercial production is not started at Nepal so far, to my knowledge, to my and to my team's knowledge. However, a trader in Gokuleshwar, that's in Darsula, he has processed. He has manufactured 200 to 600 kg of soapnut oils in 2016-17. Since then, we do not have any records of trade of oils from Nepal. In KSL, 500 to 600 tons raw rittha are traded from KSL area. That's raw rittha, and it thereby becomes one of the most major exporting commodity of KSL area. And specific recommendation, I should say, the research should be on the efficient extraction process technology of rittha oil, so that oil can be produced also in KSL area, and then that is also used as biofuel. Now it's my conclusions. The trade of khabu oil, that is Prunus davidiana oil, is in very initial stages, but it has demand, so the market can be expanded. One thing we have to do is that it should be included in the royalty list. Timur is also one of the niche products of Nepal, and the market is almost assured. No problems with the market. cultivation and processing of timber will provide additional employment and income generating opportunities at local level. Rittha is, in terms of volume, one of the major product of Kailash area, and the market, now we are exporting market beyond India. So sensing the existence of potential international demand, the Rittha oil might be another product Nepal. And finally, our study showed that Nepal is demand-driven country, and the demand and price is driven by importing countries, not by Nepal. Thus, Nepal should promote the production and processing of niche or specific products. For example, timber oil, while apricot oil, that fetch higher price, and that can ensure the market and the brand of Nepalese marks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pyakurel. And thank you for joining us all the way from Dolkha. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation.
My pleasure.
And now, moving on ahead with the session. Now the next session is question and answer session. And we do have a few questions coming in the chat box. The first one is addressed to Sushila ji. And the question is, what would be the reasons for conversion of grasslands to forest in the high altitude areas?
Thank you, Binay sir, for your query. Regarding the conversion of grassland into forest cover in the high altitude area, we haven't witnessed such conversions in the higher altitude from grassland into forest cover. However, there is in the lower altitude areas, particularly within the community managed leasehold and religious forest, and the forest which are managed by the local people and communities, grassland has converted, some areas of grasslands have converted into shrubs and forest cover, and particularly the small shrubs that have converted into dense forest. First thing, the spatial locations are the lower areas rather than the higher areas. In the case of high altitude areas, grassland, due to the pasture management, grassland area of grassland has increased. The previously barren lands have been converted into grassland to some extent. And regarding the forest cover increase in the lower altitude areas, lower elevations, that I missed to address during my presentation are the declining dependency of people upon forest resource for firewood. That means due to the electricity and LPG gas facilities, people's dependency upon firewood has declined. First thing, and next thing is the traditional local people, they regard forest as an integral part of their livelihood, as we discussed earlier, and haphazard exploitation of resource is dissuaded with the provision of punishment, penalties, and prohibition. That means punishment and penalties to the activities which go beyond the rules and regulations that they have said to conserve the resources sustainably, whereas several forests are declared as a sacred forest, where the extraction forest products are strictly prohibited. Some communities have created the symbolic representation of gods and associated with resources such as mandus, devi sthans, and such activities have controlled the deforestation. Next thing is some communities have their traditional beliefs associated with forest and some species, such as the rhizomes of some trees can, for instance, interesting instances that the rhizomes of some trees are used to avoid evil spirits, they believe, and while the medicinal and herbal plants are protected, and regular monitoring of forest and pastures and rotational system of utilization, they have contributed in the forest cover increase in the study area. And I think I could convince you with the answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sushila ji, for your answer. We have other questions also coming in. Next one is to Dipesh ji, I would like to ask. There's a question, what are the challenges for international trading of essential oils in Nepal? I believe in your presentation you had mentioned we need to move beyond, look to other markets, but what are the challenges to go into the international market?
Very good question. When we talk about the essential oils export, we have multiple challenges, because the first one is measure. There are two challenges. Number one is quality, where we process it. When the processing technology over here, we have of course now we are mostly using this essential stainless steel units. That's good, but the regulation of temperature and adulterations during the processing, there is one major challenge. And the second one is finding the market at international level. We know for last 2,000 years or 3,000 years, we have been exporting raw medicinal plants to India and China. For last 20 or 30 years, now we are exporting our medicinal plants, essential oils, to Europe and India. To make our essential oils marketable at Europe and at European countries, we need to have massive marketing campaigns, and then we do have to have linkage, which is right now in the very nascent stage. So these two major challenges. Number one, quality. Number two, enhanced networking, which is lacking. I hope this is the answer for essential oils.
Thank you, Dipesh ji. We have some more questions coming in, and this is to Sushila ji. One is, have you gone through the article by Uddin et al. 2015 on a similar topic, and if you found any differences in the results? And another question is that you highlighted to incorporate indigenous local knowledge-based conservation practice. Could you reflect a bit first on main challenges, and second, how this goal could be successfully achieved? So, Sushila ji, these are two questions to you.
Thank you so much for your query. Regarding the paper by Uddin et al. 2015, I am aware about the database. I'm familiar with the database that Uddin et al. Has prepared. And as per my knowledge, that is the national level database. And regarding the comparison, our study is focused on mainly 4 districts, and we have prepared the local level database. So definitely there might be some differences regarding the results, but regarding the comparative analysis of the results, I haven't gone through it, and definitely I will go through it during in the forthcoming days. And it is very important database and important paper. And to be frank, we still have to go through the papers, because this is our ongoing task, and we are in the preliminary phase of the research work. We will incorporate all the compare relatively similar and results from different researchers. And regarding the another question, I'm just looking for it. May I, sir, can you please repeat the next question?
Yes, I mean, the question is regarding indigenous local knowledge in conservation. Could you reflect a bit on the main challenges?
Oh, yes, thank you so much. And yes, as we discussed earlier, the local people are they are conserving and managing the forest resource based on their local knowledge. However, their local knowledge and their way of management, they are not properly reflected in, or I mean institutionally incorporated in policies and management plans. So several tree species, several plants and tree species that they are preserving, and several areas that they are conserving for on the basis of their local knowledge and beliefs. uh, they do not they are not supported or guided by the technical know-how and technical knowledge. So it would be highly influential if their local perspective and their local knowledge could be incorporated with the technical and scientific knowledge while preparing the management plans and institutional activities. That's it. That's it, sir.
Thank you, Sushila ji. I think there is one more question, and I think it is directed towards you itself. The traditional fire management system. So, does in higher altitudes, does it have negative impact on forest and highly important plants? Traditional.
Definitely, sir. The houses on the higher altitude still rely upon the forest resource for their fuel and fuel needs to fulfill their needs for fuel energy. They basically use the firewood as their source of energy for cooking. So definitely there is the higher dependency of local people upon forest resource in terms of firewood. However, there is another important point to be noted, that several households on the higher altitudes are migrating towards the Tarai region and towards the lower altitude, and people are also leaving the cultivated land fallow, or they are growing the private forestry in the abandoned land. That's on the one hand. The remaining households have been using the firewood for the energy use, energy source. However, forest cover has also increased in several spots due to migration and private forestry on the abandoned land. And that's why there is no strong negative impact. However, the management practice and forest cover management, forest management, as well as the newer forests developed in the private lands where people have migrated, have contributed in the forest cover increase. There is overall increase in the forest cover within the study area.
Thank you, Sushila ji. And now, since we have no more questions, I have one actual final question to Dipesh ji. I mean, what could be the role of government to add value and encourage oil extraction in the landscape?
To encourage oil extraction, first we have to do the production in scale. So number one would be the massive or large scale cultivation initiative that should be promoted in KSL area and also in Nepal, throughout Nepal, that government should do. And the second one is to manage the quality. I think to manage the quality, we have to do some we have to distribute, or we have to make some initiatives that will ensure the quality, that will ensure the supply of quality raw materials. Right now, when we store our raw materials, we have very poor system of storage, and the fungus development is the major issue for most of for these medicinal plants. What we have to do is we have to distribute, or maybe liaise with some other agencies, or some bilateral aid agencies, or by government itself, to distribute some sort of the solar dryers or electric dryers, or some units that will maintain the quality of raw materials in storage. So these are two things that government should do. And then finally, I can see one question directed to me by Yan Joy. He was asking that is the Sichuan paper same as that of our timber? No. Our timber is called Nepalese paper or paper, whereas over there, the Sichuan paper, the two species are different. Our species is Zanthoxylum armatum. The Sichuan paper mostly is Zanthoxylum pepperatum. Thank you very much. I think that will answer all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dipesh ji. And now, since we have no further questions, we'll move towards the closing of this very interesting session. And while closing this session, I would like to thank all the presenters for the very insightful and interesting presentations. I believe it was very enriching for all of us, and would like to wish you all the very best in your future research. To summarize a little on the three presentations, the first one was on the forest cover, land use change. It was very interesting to know about the changes in the land use and land cover change within the landscape, especially the role that has been played by the movement of people or migration, and the role of indigenous management systems that have led to increase in forest cover in the landscape. The second presentation was on, of course, fuel wood, the use of fuel wood in collection sites of Yasagumba collection sites. It was interesting to learn about the connect between non-timber forest products, medicinal and aromatic plants collection, and its ecological implications, in this case in terms of fuel wood. I cannot agree more with the need to introduce alternative fuel and heating options during collection seasons, along with strict reinforcement of regulations on fuel wood harvesting. It was also interesting to learn about the closed and open Yasagumba collection sites and the implication of fuel wood extraction and use. Lastly, the presentation by Dr. Dipesh was on the trade potential of extracted oils from different NTFPs in the landscape, and the need, of course, for low cost-efficient technology to increase benefits and income of the local communities within the landscape. The landscape is rich in resources, and there is a need to invest both in research and processing of such resources for added benefits to the local communities in the landscape. With this, I would like to groups and will be sent to respective rooms for the poster presentations. I request all participants to kindly return after the break, which will be at 3:30. So we'll request all participants to have a short break and join us back at 3:30 sharp. Moderators for this session will be Dr. Smriti Gurung and Dr. Srijana Joshi.
Let me introduce Dr. Smriti ji, and then we can go to the poster session. So Dr. Smriti is an assistant professor at Department of Environment Science and Engineering at Kathmandu University, Nepal. She holds a PhD in high altitude limnology and freshwater biodiversity. She has 20 years of experience in teaching and in both Nepal and India, and she has been involved in different research projects related to water quality assessment, freshwater biodiversity, with particular focus on diatoms, microinvertebrates, and fishes, and has published articles in national and international peer-reviewed journals. And she is a member of the International Development Peer Review College. So over to you, Dr. Smriti. Please moderate these poster sessions.
Thank you, Sunita ji. And namaste, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on wherever you are. In this poster session, there are going to be 6 posters. The presenters are Bhawesh Pant, Saurav Dev, Rinzin Phunjok Lama, Alice Millington, Arti Kala, and Sitting Jia. After we are going to have a short question and answer session after the poster presentations. So we'll start with Bhawesh. Sunita ji has already introduced Bhawesh Pant. Please, Bhawesh.
So the first poster presentation is on invisible indigenous begins, sketching the exemplary life world of the Raji tribe in the Uttarakhand by Bhawesh Pant. Bhawesh Pant is pursuing his MPhil from the Center for Study on Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policies, Tata Institute of Social Science, Mumbai. His for his MPhil dissertation, he is focusing on the Raji tribe of Uttarakhand, who are classified by the government of Nepal as a particularly vulnerable tribal group. Pant is more focused on the social exclusion, governance, and decolonial theories. So over to you, Bhavesh Pant. Please. Okay, so Smriti ji is also back. Let me.
Thank you. Greetings to all. First of all, a cautious note. Presently, I am COVID positive and I'm in isolation, so my articulation can be a bit problematic, to bear with me. So here I start. The Raji tribe is a particularly vulnerable tribal group, dwelling majorly in the eastern part of Pithoragarh district of Uttarakhand. It was in 1957 that the Raji people were declared a scheduled tribe along with 4 other tribes, Tharu, Buksa, Jaunsari and Bhotia. The Raji tribe, due to their prolonged exclusion in 1975, were listed under particularly vulnerable tribal group, erstwhile known as particularly tribal groups. Now, we have a detailed historicity pertaining to Rajis also. In several texts, we have a mention of these. Now, moving further, I'm coming to the mainstay of this paper, that is the exclusion and multidimensionality. I spent almost 4 months at the Raji hamlet from July to October, and these were my findings, and I'm still working on them. Marginality is a position where an individual or community experiences a state of capability deprivation, and the causality to reach this marginal state contains an intersection of varied unfreedoms, as stated by Amartya Sen. Similarly, the Raji world also contains several anecdotes of capability deprivations, which were revealed during the fieldwork. Raji tribe and their spatial remoteness. The conception of remoteness emerge in a pertinent manner while exploring the life world of Raji tribe in Uttarakhand. Several anecdotes and their expressions reveal that remoteness plays a significant role in curating their life world. One of the respondents in Altari village stated, छोटे छोटे सामान जैसे नमक के लिए भी भागी चौरा जाना होता है, 2 घंटा लगता है यहाँ से, हमारे गांव तक कच्ची सड़क भी नहीं है. The notion of distance or remoteness always fascinated social scientists. In the same tenor, Edwin Adner, the famous anthropologist, in his text stated, distance lent in enhancement, it not enchantment, to the anthropological vision. Adner was hinting that anthropology always built a rhetoric engagement with the notion of remote. The stay with the Raji populace compelled me to comprehend the idea of remote, not only in a geographical sense, but also in a sociological tone. We should always take into consideration that remoteness is not simply a static condition found somewhere out of there beyond pale. Rather, it is always being made, unmade, and transformed. Due to this remoteness, there are several vernacular structures, categories, and sensibilities curated. For instance, a group of ladies, while returning from Joljibi market to Ganagaon, stated, हर रोज सिर्फ 5 औरतें ही आता है जौलजीबी मार्केट, वही अपने साथ पूरे गांव का सामान ले आते हैं, अगले दिन दूसरी औरतें आते हैं, इस तरह से रोज की मेहनत बचती है. When I tried to comprehend this remoteness, I wrote few lines. Topography catalyzed poverty. Steep young Himalayas made for little transportation. Roads were not taken because there were no roads. Public conveyance was distant reality. Isolation was their fate, and state was dumb. The next dimension is everyday denial, anecdotes of racism and its interpretations. Racism is not a structure or ideology. Instead, it is an analytical category. Racism as a process is continually produced and reinforced through everyday actions, interactions termed as everyday racism. With their distinct dialect, the individual hailing from Raji world faces demeaning utterances from the people of dominant culture. One of the laborers in the audacious inflection stated, "क्या तुम लोग सबके सामने अपनी जंगली भाषा, I want to make you to emphasize on the word जंगली भाषा बोलते हो और ये ची चौ हमें समझ में नहीं आता, पहाड़ी आती है उसमें बोलो." Jangli remains a perennial reference for the Rajis. It becomes pertinent to explore these speech acts because people do things with the words. These often ignore everyday speech, open apertures, different dimensions of racism. This term, jungli, is not an reference in isolation, but it also reveals a system of beliefs, social structures, and discourses on cultural dynamics. And the third important part is culture assimilation. The celebrated conception of Hindu method of tribal adoption by Bose find its relevance within the Raji's realm. During the brief stay with the Raji people, it became very visible that majority of their cosmologies have turned more towards the Hindu way of life. Apart from their own tribal god, they now worship Hindu gods such as Devi, etc. More to this community also witnessed drastic change at the cultural level. Earlier, they were having marriage and death ceremonies in their traditional way. Now they have adopted fully Hindu culture practices. Raji used to bury their dead ones. Now they cremate them. Now coming to the role of state and the Raji tribe. The institutional support for the promotion of development of tribals are majorly included under heads of ITDA, that is Integrated Tribal Development Project, ITDP. The cluster under ITDA and ITDP are identified to cover smaller areas of tribal concentration with minimum total population of about 5,000 and scheduled tribe concentration of 50% or more. The government of India has declared 193. I want to focus this. The government of India has declared 193 ITDPs in 18 states, but not a single ITDP reached to Raji tribe. The cardinal consequence of these policies is a population, and the Raji tribe has a population less than 1,000. Thus, they can't be covered under any of the policies because each policies have in foundation the criteria of population. That is, each tribal community has to have a population of minimum 5,000, and it is the reason why we are unable. Raji tribes are unable to get some kind of sanction for their marginalities. In the concluding part, I want to only say the subordinates need a development approach where indigenous agency and voices from within must be made to count. The development framework we are eyeing should be based on engaged governance. Subordination and marginalization are polysemic concepts with layer manifestations. Thus, reversing it needs a relative and contextual procedure. Thus, the development approach should include stakeholders from the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavesh, for your wonderful presentation and for introducing to the world of Rajis. And we also wish you a fast recovery from COVID and get well soon. Okay, the next presenter is Saurav Dev, and he'll be talking on construction in Western Nepal and its repercussions on health. Saurabh completed his BTech in Civil Engineering from National Institute of Technology, Warangal, India. His interests encompass geotechnical engineering, geotechnical earthquake engineering, computational methods for civil engineers, and the advancement of civil engineering using machine learning. He is currently collaborating with Multilab Nepal to set up engineering projects aimed at sustainable development in the construction sector. His topic is construction in Western Nepal and its repercussions on health.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm Saurav. And yeah, my topic is construction in Western Nepal and its repercussions on health. So with the new constitution, Nepal was divided into 7 provinces. And when Nepal was divided into 7 provinces, the development has decentralized. So it's moving away from Kathmandu, east and west. So yeah, if you see on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see some of the projects that have been done throughout the country, like the 6-lane. The first picture is of the 6-lane highway in Biratnagar, while the other ones are for the highway projects in Karnali province and Sularbakchim province. So yeah, but with the influx of capitalistic ideas, like which has made profit the #1 priority, no one's talking about environment. Even if they're talking about it and they have made like certain guidelines, construction workers and investors don't necessarily follow these guidelines. So talking about my project, my project mainly deals with bridges and a hydropower project in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. And the bridges are located in Barjugad, Guigad, which are in the Bajura district, and Makarigad hydropower project, which is in the Darchula district. And yeah, so the procedure is simple. It's like civil. It's simple. You just need to go to the site, and you need to dig these holes using borehole logs, and then you collect the samples. And then there are other methods like using a standard penetration test or sieve analysis. And by using all these tests, you can like basically get the soil classification of that area, like what kind of soil does it, like what kind of soil is present there, and what is the moisture content, and what is the what is the bearing capacity. And after looking at these projects, I had referred to the Indian Road Congress 5, which is one of the IS standards used in Nepal. And the specifications for the bridge and hydropower projects are done perfectly. Like the minimum required bearing capacity for the bridge in Barjugad was like 205 to 285 kilonewtons per meter square, but the contractor has made it up to 450 kilonewton per meter square. And looking at other things like the American standards as well, like the aggregate classification, like what kind of boulders and rocks were used, were they in standard size and shape or not, all of them were correctly used. But what seems to lack, in further further investigation is probably a life cycle assessment. Like every standard is followed, but that's not going to be enough to tackle the environmental factors here. So what we basically do in a life cycle assessment is trace the source and the disposal of the item being used or the material being used and the configuration used. So like I also referenced some studies from Europe, South of America, Australia, and Asia. So in Brazil, they have found that timber, which is surprising actually, has the least carbon emission among, and it's more like its least carbon emission compared to steel and concrete. So if you were to build a bridge of timber, it would be more beneficial to the environment. But yeah, that is not going to be an option because it's going to promote deforestation and other things in that area. Like, why would you think that steel and concrete are more carbon, emit more carbons and more greenhouse gases? Is because they are the materials, like the ores that were used to produce steel and concrete, like limestone and iron, they need a lot of energy to be converted into a usable form. And then most of these ores are extracted from open pit mining, and these have like a lot of health hazards for people. Like when they're doing open pit mining, they might be exposed to radioactive elements and other like radioactive elements. Also, they might be affected by like various chemicals, like during construction, like if calcium, like during the construction of bridges and hydropower projects, there's a leaching of calcium chloride, chromium, calcium oxide, and silica. Like these are very harmful to the eyes, the skin. They might even cause severe allergic reactions. And these adverse effects are not only limited to the construction workers, but also to the like people living in that area, because they're not conscious about what kind of materials are there in the environment, and even to the animals as well. And further studies have shown that there's this hydropower project which is there in Darchula district. The river goes on to Kali Nadi, and after that it joins to the Ganges, which is flowing through Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. So people in these areas, like, you might say that hydropower might be the best renewable energy source, but it's not. It actually has a lot of detrimental effects to the environment. It first of all, it restricts the migration of species, and also it might cause uh, hospitalizations. Like a study in Vietnam has shown that the people living in the downstream side of the hydropower project experience diarrhea, respiratory problems, even like drought, and sometimes if the bridge is not maintained properly, it might even cause floods. So it's very important to consider, like, why, when, how we are constructing it, like what materials are being used, and the bridge configuration, because they play an important role in deciding what might be the future of the people living in the downstream side. And yeah, so the solution can be use of, like, instead of these materials, you can use like biodegradable geosynthetics, which have a particular lifespan, which is like there being certain research being done, and these things will help groundwater, like um, help restrict these chemicals within that vicinity and not let it move down to the groundwater level, because a lot of people depend on groundwater in South, especially in South Asia and in the Middle East. They depend on groundwater as a source of drinking water. So yeah, all of these factors need to be considered, and like a four-phase model should be developed. A four-phase model, like what kind of firstly characterization of the materials, and then what can be the uncertainties in the project, and then you need to robustly optimize what kind of pathways the water flows through, or what kind of detrimental effects the material has, and do proper testing. So all of these must be incorporated. And yeah, if you do this, then it will help promote both development and an environmental safety line. So yeah, even though the government of Nepal has clearly specified that like an environmental impact assessment must be done and the four phases must be followed, there is no encouragement for the contractor to do these because there is no profit in that. So future work can be on like the difference between like the how these methods work together and how they can benefit everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurav. Again, wonderful presentation, highlighting the environmental as well as the health implications of different infrastructural development going in the region. The third presenter is Rinzin Phunjok Lama, and Rinzin is a native of Humla district in Karnali province, Nepal. Since 2014, Rinzin has been actively involved in research and conservation of high-altitude wildlife and their conservation in Nepal Himalaya, and has authored several peer-reviewed articles. Currently, he is working as a conservation biologist for the Third World Conservancy and is a board member of the Mountain Spirit. He was also awarded with the prestigious WWF Nepal's Conservation Award 2020. Rinzin will be talking on status of human-wildlife conflicts in the lower Namkha region, Humla, Nepal. Rinzin, over to you.
Hello, everybody. At the moment, I'm speaking from Lomantang. I'm here for the vlog. I don't know how well the internet is because it's snowing here now. I will quickly wrap up the presentation. Namkha region is one of the largest non-protected landscape in Nepal, rich in high-altitude wildlife such as Himalayan wolf. My study is from Namkha region, from Kailash Sacred from Humla. Namkha is one of the largest Trans-Himalaya region in Nepal, rich in high-altitude wildlife. It homes to snow leopard, Himalayan wolf, the last herd of wildlife, and many more. And we try to focus on human-wildlife conflict in lower Namkha region, which is quite lower in elevation and like more dominated by the forest and ravine. So this study is based on the household survey of the 100 household in lower Namkha region. And basically we wanted to look at how serious the human-wildlife conflict is. And the main purpose was to develop a conservation plan in collaboration with the Namkha Rural Municipality. Human-wildlife conflict was there, but it was not too serious. Most of the conflict was with the porcupine and Himalayan langur over crop raiding. There was some conflict with the Himalayan black bear with some human casualties. As in Upper Namkha region, more conflict was of the livestock depredation, which was not the case in Lower Namkha region. However, there was some conflict, and the issues of subsistence hunting was more common in Lower Namkha region. And apart from human-wildlife conflict, the disease looked to be a more serious problem in terms of livestock husbandry there. And locals showed wide there were more acceptance towards non-conflicting species such as blue sea, Himalayan mox deer. But even the people's acceptance to snow leopard was quite high, but they were they expressed more negative attitude towards porcupine, which was just recently colonizing to those areas, and they were expressing negative attitude towards Himalayan langur and Himalayan black bear. Apart from that, like the people expressed positive attitude towards wildlife conservation. So the future needs, Lower Namkha region, there has been very few studies in this region focusing on biodiversity conservation and human-wildlife conflict. So this was just a rapid assessment we did to determine the intensity and the nature of the conflict. And rather than human-wildlife conflict, there is a more need to focus on the veterinary service to the local people so that the livestock husbandry get better support. And there is also further need to do more intensive biodiversity survey and education program focusing on locals' capacity build-up so that we train local communities and promote them as a steward for biodiversity conservation in the area, which have been receiving very less priority in terms of conservation from the government and other non-government organizations. I think I will just sum up like this. If there is some question, then I will be happy to give response.
Thank you, Rinzin, for your presentation. I think human-wildlife conflict is one of the pertinent issues when it comes to conservation biology. And have a wonderful time in Lamantang. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving on to next presentation, we have Alice Millington. Alice Millington is a PhD student in Geography and Social Anthropology at the University of Cambridge. Her research focuses on how climate change is understood by high-altitude communities in the Himalayas, and she has plans to conduct ethnographic fieldwork in the Kanchenjunga landscape in 2021. And Alice Millington will be talking on religion as an entry point to communicate climate knowledge in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. Alice, to you.
Okay, hi, I'm Alice Millington and I'm really excited to be here today. My poster today proposes a new mode of communicating about climate change to inhabitants of the Kailash Sacred Landscape. This is a region which is under intense threat of climate change in the near future. So the premise behind my poster is that in order to allow for effective preparation, the risks of climate change have to be communicated effectively to residents' communities. However, my research has highlighted that many communities within the KSL have limited understanding of climate change from a scientific standpoint. Therefore, alternative methods of communication that don't draw from scientific thought might be required for outsiders to communicate the message effectively. So in the KSL, there is a rich language for speaking about the environment and explaining changes that have occurred in the environment. So within the KSL, there's a widespread perception that features of the landscape are animated by a host of local gods, spirits, and deities. To many believers in KSL communities, the moods of the spirits may be connected with weather events. Although this is a different explanatory narrative to that of greenhouse gases and carbon emissions, this religious model does still see humans to be a cause of weather and climate events. For instance, if a deity's home is disturbed by people chopping down trees, negative weather might be inflicted on them as a punishment. Similarly, local religion understands physical pollution to be a cause of spiritual pollution, which also angers the deities. In turn, they'll respond with bad weather, disasters, and even glacial lake outburst floods. Such beliefs offer a potential framework in which climate change can be framed to residents without needing to draw from scientific explanations. This could be extremely valuable. A review of papers on communication to indigenous groups worldwide revealed that outsider information, for instance, climate science, is poorly understood and poorly received when it's communicated in outsider narratives, for instance, the terminologies of science. However, when the same information is framed in narratives and concepts that are familiar to the listeners, understanding and retention are extremely high. My call is for outsider groups, such as academics, policymakers, and NGOs, to deepen their understanding of the religious features of the landscape as a means to improve their climate change communication. In this way, religious narratives about the weather could be harnessed and reframed to convey the message of climate change. So in seeking to bridge the gap, we might see more success in a shorter time by learning to translate the concepts of climate science into an existing religious lexicon, rather than relying on these communities to rapidly adapt and learn to understand science. This is important because with climate change, time is of the essence. But more than this, I propose that the beliefs could be threefold. Firstly, because understandings of earthquakes, floods, and glacial lake outbursts are bound up with deity beliefs, religion could also offer an entry point to disaster management for more acute hazards. Secondly, by communicating in a way that honors people's religious understandings, we can strengthen people's cultural and ecological resilience without undermining their existing beliefs. This is particularly important because climate change itself presents a threat to the survival of people's traditional beliefs. Thirdly, by becoming fluent in the narratives and mythologies of local religion, mutual knowledge exchange can strengthen all parties' knowledge of the KSL. Outsider parties will be better informed about local people's preferences and practices when they are planning interventions, and these are less likely to conflict with people's religious beliefs. Most importantly, climate science could be communicated to residents in terms that are more widely understood. This is just a pilot idea based on my secondary research, which I've not yet tested in the field. So I'd love to hear any thoughts and feedbacks, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Alice, for your wonderful presentation and highlighting the importance of the local people's spiritual belief in addressing some of the environmental and the social issues. And I hope you'll have a successful research and a successful trip in 2021 to Kanchenjunga landscape. We have the next presenter, the last presenter, Arti Kala. Arti Kala received her doctoral degree in forest botany from Forest Research Institute, Dehradun, India. She is involved in research activities on resource dependency in the forests of Western Himalaya and sustainable development using a participatory approach. She previously worked in the Kailash Sacred Landscape Conservation and Development Initiative project from 2013 to 2018 with Wildlife Institute of India as a research associate. Arti's topic is local communities' perception and attitude towards transformed ecosystem, a case study from Kailash Sacred Landscape, India. Arti, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My topic for the poster presentation today is local communities' perception and attitude towards the transformed ecosystem in the Chandos Valley, Pithoragarh. The prominence of my study was to recognize and assess the local community's perception, awareness, attitude towards changing forms of high altitude ecosystems. For the study, we had selected Himkola microshed watershed, which is in Chandos Valley, block Dharchula in Pithoragarh district of Uttarakhand state, India, which is exclusively known as the Kailash Sacred Landscape, India. The study site, as I already said, Himkola, is a micro watershed of Kali River selected as a sampled unit for the present study. This Himkola watershed is basically located between the 30 degrees to 0.12 minutes in the north and 80 degrees somewhere through the east in the central point of the Pithoragarh district and belongs to the Chandos Valley, Dharchula in Kumaon, Himachal. The valley lies between the Kali and the Dholi river and is surrounded by Dharma and Bias valleys with altitude ranging from 1,200 meters to over 7,000 meters. Now, the methodology used over here. Generally, we have used a reconnaissance survey was conducted in the site, and we used the PRA method, in which mainly a household survey was conducted by using semi-structured questionnaires, and these questionnaires were done in two parts. The focus group discussion was also organized to acquire all the facts regarding the study. The first part of the questionnaire included brief information about the villages, related social economic details. So we have collected everything what we could gather about the socio-economic life of these villages. While the second part was mainly about to collect the native communities' perception regarding the transformed forests, grasslands, water bodies, and agro ecosystems from the past to what is now in the present. Hamlets of the villages which were easily recognizable were randomly selected. Now, the questions which were asked to the key informants were actually divided into two groups. These informants were, first group was above the age of 45 years, and the second group was the people between the age of 14 to 45 years, and they were further divided in the study into men and women. So both the things were considered as age as well as their sex. Now the questionnaires was given individually to the participants, and they were asked to scale it between 1 to 3, where 1 was to be given to the condition good, 2 was given to the bad, and the 3 means the conditions are same, they have not changed, on the basis of their understanding. And secondly, to determine the responsible factors for the changing ecosystems. Now the results and what we have obtained over here, I'll discuss. A total 130 people were given the questionnaire, as I've already told, and face-to-face interview was taken. Now 23 males and 31 females above the age of 45 were had successfully done the questionnaires, while only 42 males and 34 females between the age of 14 to 45 years completed the questionnaire successfully. So it does a question, if we talk about the response rate, we have approximately achieved 97% from each of the respondent here. Now, through this study, native people have actually expressed how they feel the change in the weather from the last 10 to 20 years have been responsible for the changing conditions in their livelihoods. So the various factors, the various parameters were like forest, agriculture, water resources, grasslands. Now, taking up one by one, discussing the result, forest. As we all know, the forests are very rich in this area. Aesculus indica, Aesculus stericellum, Aesculus acuminatum, then Lionia, Eophilia, Alnus nippellens, rhododendron are some of the major species of trees which are found over here in the lower side of the micro watershed. And on the upper side, we find Pinus, Quercus, then Suga, Betula, Texas baccata, other common species, while in the middle and the lower strata also have a rich high diversity of the medicinal plants like chippy, katuki, then thaikidi, chook, salmona panja, and thunar, that is the Texas baccata. And there are other NTFPs also which are being collected. Now, what the response shows us that the old people are basically unsatisfied with the conditions of the forest. 3 males, that is 13.4%, sorry, 0.4%, and 2 females, that is 6.45%, claim that the conditions are better than before, while 19 males, that is 82.61%, and 29 females, 93.55% females, claim that the conditions have worsened from what they were 20 years back. Similarly, in the field of agriculture, from the past to the present day, agriculture has always been the first way of life in the valley. Now, the size of the land which they acquired, which the people acquired, generally depends on the area, altitude, and their caste. Nonetheless, in the micro watershed, on an average, each family has about 1 to 80 nullies. Now, nully is a local measurement unit of the land over there, which approximately is equivalent to 2,160 square feet, which is rent-fed and scattered being on the slopes. They are not regular because of the slope. Now, the Rangbhutia, which is a scheduled tribe, indigenous community in this microshed water area, and a number of other general caste people have the maximum land, while the scheduled caste have the minimum amount of the land occupied for them. There are large patches of barren land also present in this valley, which were earlier fertile. Now, in the site, sharecropping system is traditionally opted, a system by the rural communities, and primarily they cultivate two types of crops, viz. The Rabi and the Kharif. Amaranthus, Hordeum, Ogal, Chena, Mandua, Bhat, Masoor Dal. These are the traditional foods which were cultivated earlier. But now most of the communities are growing wheat, barley, maize, then the black peas and potato. So there has been a major change in the crops which are being grown now. The water resource, many springs and the surface groundwater resource, which are locally known as Nala or the Dhara and Jayanti streams, are the sources of water in this micro watershed. Now, from various nalas, drinking water is supplied to the villages. Water is being utilized in various work as general, domestic to all. Now, steadily, there has been a reduction in the supply of the existing drinking water sources, along with the increased dependency in threatening is now a threatening alarm for the future. There has been a wide change in the water resources.
Excuse me, Arti, you need to speed up, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So there has been a change in the water patterns. So then grasslands. Similarly, there has been a change in the grassland use also. The pastoralism, medicinal herbs, and the major sources of livelihoods had been a drastic change. So our findings have been in dovetail with the bulk of research which has already been done. Now, according to the local people perception, the responsible factors for this changing ecosystems are generally the in nature and intensity. Then the changing ecosystem has been always a trend. Grassland, meadows, natural water resources, as well as the traditional agricultural system has been effective. Thus, augmented anthropogenic pressure, adverse climatic stress, and the insatiable demand for the more natural resources, including the land, forest, food, etc., are the major factors which are affecting the natural resources over here. Now, significance of direct experience of local people and their perspective towards natural assets has been made through this study, and it has also been found that to protect their natural resources and achieve some of the have achieved already, these people have already achieved some of the objectives due to their views, efforts and interventions. Now, what can be done in the future is that an capacity building can be the entry point for the intervention in this area. Plus, the community-based traditional management and restoration activities related to ecosystem should also be promoted and supported in this area. Local strategies and policies should be revised again, and leadership should be responsible for the carrying out of these in the area. The perception of benefits and positive attitude towards the management can also
Arti, I think you need to stop your presentation. You're well past the allocated time.
it's over, ma'am. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation.
Thank you, Arti, for your wonderful presentation. I do have a couple of questions. One to Saurav Dev. You're talking about this hydropower being developed in this river in Dachula. I was just wondering what river is that?
The river's name changes. Like it's all I know is it's near the Sitola and there's some other district. Like it's between that and then it goes on to connect with the Kali River, which is like the border between Uttarakhand and Sudharpakshim province.
It's like, is it in the pipeline or the work has the construction work has already started?
It has already started.
Next question is to Alice Millington. Alice, are you there? I was wondering, like you're talking about these local deities, okay, in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. So I was wondering whether the people have adopted animism or do they belong to one particular religious sect?
So the groups that I mostly do my research on are Tibetan Buddhist groups. So that's the area that I can speak with the most confidence on. I think it wouldn't be described so much as animistic beliefs in the groups that I've looked at, much more to do with a sort of a more indigenous inflection of Buddhist deities. So you see very localized deities which are only in this specific part of the landscape. But there's also some concept of the more general Buddhist deities that are known in more areas than just the Kailash landscape.
Okay, thank you. We had 5 posters in this session and total of 5 posters with varied themes and ranging from the plight of the indigenous people to the communities' health and adaptation to infrastructural development and also how spiritual beliefs can actually act as a bridge between the locals and the outside stakeholders to address the different issues, environmental or the environmental issues or the social issues. And I think one of the presenters' presentation was on the human-wildlife conflict, again, a very pertinent issue. But all in all, I would say the central theme of all the presentation was community. I think, and the role of the community, their participation, their involvement has long been recognized and is an integral component of conservation at all levels. And all the participants, okay, and all the presentations actually highlighted the role of the community and highlighted the community's perception towards different environmental, development, and social issues, and how community and outside stakeholders, such as the government, the policymakers, the entrepreneurs, the donors, etc., can jointly and holistically address those issues in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. I think this was the gist of the presentation. I would like to thank all the presenters and the audience, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Kailash CAFE committee also. Over to you, Sunita.
So before we end this today's session, we'd like to run a Slido question for your feedback on today's session. Your feedbacks are highly valuable to improve in days to come. Hence, please use the QR code as it's shown in the screen, and then use your mobile camera to scan that code, and you can see the Slido tab. Click that tab and you can go to the Slido questions, or you can visit the website slido.com. So the first question that appears on the screen is, please collectively rate today's presentations. So we can see that 70% has marked as a very interesting presentations. You can see most of the participants have found that today's presentation, both from the oral presentation and poster presentation, has found it very interesting. I think the number is changing. I request all the participants to please provide your feedback. So we can see that nearly more than 65% of the participants feel that These presentations were very interesting. So we go to the next question. So do you learn anything new today? I think most of we did. Let's see. So we can see that about 90% of us have learned a lot of new things today then. So the next question. So will you come to the cafe again tomorrow? So 80% of us want to join the cafe again tomorrow to learn more about the Kailash Sacred Landscape. So before we end this session, I'd like to quickly go through the tomorrow's menu. So tomorrow we'll meet again at 10 a.m. Nepali time. So on the third day of the Kailash Cafe, we will have 2 sessions. The first one is on cultural and heritage with 3 presentations that cover the area of cultural heritage in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. And the second session is on a technology with again 3 presentations. So I hope you will be all there tomorrow to learn more on the cultural and technological aspect on the research that is happening in the Kailash Sacred Landscape. So once again, thank you all for the time for joining today's session, and I hope to see you all tomorrow again. Bye-bye. Take care.